everyone, and welcome back to the journey. As you can see, today we're going to be talking about OB, in particular fetal development. Now with fetal development, we have 3 stages when it comes to the embryonic stage. And the first stage is our pre-embryonic stage, which starts from the first day of conception when the egg is being fertilized to 2 weeks into that. So in that process, you're just going to see a lot of cell division that is going to occur. Now, the second stage we have is our embryonic stage, and with our embryonic stage, this lasts from 2 weeks to 8 weeks. And at this point, it is so important for a mother to get all of the nutrients that she needs, because a lot of times the main organs are already being developed, they're already forming, and again, the embryo is a lot more prone to teratogenics. And with teratogenics is just pretty much a fancy word to just say that any substance that can cause harm towards fetal development that's going to cause abnormal structures. So you have your radiation, medication, viruses, drugs, right? All those different things that can cause harm to the fetus, okay, are your teratogenics, okay? And at that stage, this is more susceptible, right? Because again, it's in the beginning stages, okay? So a lot of things are a lot more fragile, and a lot more harm can take place in this stage. Now, the last stage we have is our fetal period, and our fetal period lasts from 9 weeks all the way to birth. And what's happening in this stage is pretty much the organs are just being more refined throughout this whole nine months period, okay? Now, with this, you may say, you know, if you have all the organs that you're going to have in the 8 weeks, what exactly is happening, okay? So the word redefined is pretty much saying that all of these organs are pretty much now developing within detail. So for instance, the example with the heart, right? You have the heart structure is already made, that organ is already made, and it actually starts beating within 4 weeks. With just 4 weeks, the heart is already pumping, right? Now, as far as it being more redefined, right, you can see the coordinate tendinate, the papillary muscles, all the different grooves, the different chambers starts forming properly, right? That hole, that foramen ovale starts closing up, right? All these different things eventually will just get more redefined as the child grows up until birth, okay? So again, this is just one example with the heart, but all of your other organs like the kidneys, you know, the ears, the liver, the kidney, all of these things are just now becoming more and more redefined, having more detail, so that way these structures can function properly. So next we have is the major organs of pregnancy, and we have our embryonic membranes. And with our embryonic membranes, the reason why we have them in the first place is because it's going to provide protection and support for the fetus and the embryo while it's still growing and developing. Okay. Now, there's two main parts that makes up the embryonic membrane. And the first one is your chorion. Now, with your chorion, it is the outermost membrane, and what it does, it eventually develops into the placenta. And with that said, it also have these finger-like projections on the surface of it, which are called your chorion villi, which is the same exact DNA as the fetus, okay? So this is where the genetic testing now can play a part. So this is the earliest genetic testing that you can do. It is from 10 to 12 weeks, right? And what happens is they will go ahead and snip those chorion villi, and from there they will go ahead and see exactly what's going on with the fetus, okay? Because again, those finger-like projections is the actual DNA of the fetus. It is the same exact, so they can go ahead and get those genetic testing. Now, within 4 months, those villi starts to disappear, and you are going to be left with a smooth surface. So there is a time frame of when you can do this test, and the test is called your chorionic villi sampling test. And with that said, there is a time frame, but this is the earliest genetic testing that you can do. So the second membrane that we have is your amnion, and this is your second layer that is going to develop. And with that said, it is the innermost layer, and that layer is a thin protective layer, whereas the chorion was a thick protective layer that was made from the thromboblast, okay? This is a thin protective layer that contains the amniotic fluid, okay? Now also with this, it forms inside the amniotic cavity, and pretty much the amniotic cavity is the space between the membrane of the embryo. okay? And that lies the embryonic cavity. All right. Also, the amnion expands as the fetus grows, and it is able to expand up until it touches the chorion. Okay, so again, together the chorion and the amnion makes up the embryonic membranes. All right. Now, inside the embryonic membranes, right, where they say is the bag of water, right, and when she's getting ready to go into labor, they say her water broke, right. That water that they're referring to is your amniotic fluid, and that bag that they're referring to is your amniotic membrane. All right. So again, we probably heard these things 1,000 times, but we never correlated and actually use the proper terms to say, hey, this is the amniotic bag, this is the amniotic membrane, this is the amniotic fluid, right? Layman terms, we just say her water broke, right? So again, those are the two membranes that makes up the embryonic membrane. So in this picture, right, we have the outer layer, which is the chorion, and that is the thicker layer, and it is the one that is first developed. And then you have the inner layer. As you can see, you have your amnion, which is the second most layer that produces the amniotic fluid. All right, and then you see right there where they have the blue area. Well, inside that blue area, the amniotic fluid that is surrounding the fetus, this is the fetus of the embryo, and this is where the fetus is then going to grow, in that area. All right, and then down where you see the placenta, right, in that region, that is going to be attached to the uterine wall. And as you can see, the chorion makes up the placenta, okay, like I mentioned earlier. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and talk about the amniotic fluid. And with the amniotic fluid, the main thing you need to know is just the function of the amniotic fluid. So I like to break it down into 5 main functions of the amniotic fluid. And most of the time you see these types of questions as your select all question. I know when I was in nursing school, this was definitely one of my select all questions, okay? So you want to make sure you get it all right, because as you know, if you get one wrong on the select all, the whole thing is wrong, right? So as far as function, the amniotic fluid main job is to cushion the embryo and protect the fetus from any injuries, okay? It also helps with regulation of temperature. As we know, the fetus is not able to regulate their own temperature, so they have to solely rely on the mother's temperature, which is then releases to the fetus itself. So if you can think about it, when you're in a pool and the pool is warm, right, that also keeps you warm. Even though the outside temperature could be cold, as long as that pool is warm, it gives warmth to you, okay? And again, when you're jumping in the pool and different things like that, right, it gives you a cushion, right? It protects you, because if you don't just go straight to the bottom and hit the floor, that water kind of works as a cushion, which is the same principle that goes for the amniotic fluid. So when you think of the amniotic fluid, think about you in a swimming pool. I think that's like one of the best illustrations to kind of get an understanding of exactly how it's able to function, okay? Also, it promotes growth and development, okay? And another thing, it prevents fetal adherence, right? So again, you don't want the fetus actually sticking to the amnion, right? You want them to have some type of mobility going, so that water provides movement throughout the sac. And again, it also aids in musculoskeletal development, because if the baby's able to move, they're able to kind of work out those musculoskeletal parts of their body, right, and be able to move those limbs, get those the bone and everything working and function the way as it should, okay? So it allows the sticking to no longer take place, because that fluid is in that space, okay? And last but not least, the fluid is also used for testing, okay? And one of the testing that they use is your amniocentesis testing, which I'll go ahead and go over in a different slide, where I'll talk about all the different genetic testing that can be done. So far you know about 2, the chorionic villi sampling, and now you have your amniotic, your amniocentesis, which pretty much they just take some of the amniotic fluid, and within that fluid it can tell you exactly some of the genetic findings and testing and things like that that is floating in that fluid. We're going to go ahead and talk about the amount of fluid that we should expect to see within the amniotic fluid, okay? So after 20 weeks, you should see somewhere between 700 to 1,000 mLs worth of your amniotic fluid. And that is a normal range of where the amniotic fluid is normally going to be throughout the pregnancy. Okay. Now, if it is less than the required amount, it is a term called oleohydramnios, and with this is pretty much any amniotic fluid that is less than 500. Now, the newer books are saying 400, so again, go by your book, but just know that the range is going to be somewhere between 400 to 500. Anything less than that, right? So 300, 400, right, is your zone to know that you are oleohydramnios. And some complications with oleohydramnios is pretty much the higher risk of your cord compression, right? Because the baby's not able to move around a lot because you have limited areas to move because you have a limited amount of fluid. So again, with the baby being in the amniotic fluid, right? What's also in the amniotic fluid? The cord, the umbilical cord, right? Where the baby gets its nutrients from the mother and oxygen, right? So again, if I don't have enough fluid, right, that cord that stays cushioned, right, then becomes flat. And when that becomes flat, it definitely puts the fetus at compromising its nutrients and oxygen. Okay, so that's the biggest risk when it comes to oleohydramnios, and the cause of it is pretty much unknown, but it does have some related factors, and some related factors is pretty much your IUGR, which stands for intrauterine growth restricted fetuses. It also is seen in people who have placenta insufficiency, renal malformation, and poor fetal lung development. Okay, is the type of complication that you will see these mothers have that are dealing with oleohydramnios. Now, another one that you have is your hydramnios, and hydramnios is anything more than 1,000 mLs. Okay, so anything more than 1,000 mLs is your hydramnios, and polyhydramnios, poly meaning many, right, is more than 2,000 mLs worth. Okay, so if you have polyhydramnios, just know that it's more than 2,000. And the cause of this for both hydramnios and polyhydramnios, again, is unknown, but it is associated with major congenital abnormalities as well as GI malformation. All right? And then another thing with the hydramnios is seen within 10 to 20% of mothers who have diabetes, and this is because of the excessive amount of urine that the fetus is putting out within the amniotic fluid itself. Okay? So again, this happens in just 10 to 20%, but that can be a reason of why you would see patients who are hydramnios, is because these mothers may have, gestational diabetes, okay, or they're already diabetic in itself. Now, within the placenta, it takes place and grows within about 3 weeks into the pregnancy. Also with the placenta, it develops at the site where the embryo attaches itself to the embryo wall and grows about up to the 20th week. From there, it starts to get thicker and it covers itself mainly half of the uterine wall. Okay, so it covers about half of the uterine wall. All right, and it's also responsible for nutrition, respiratory, and excretory function that happens between the fetus and the mother. All right, it also during the pregnancy, the mother and the fetus blood never mixes up until the point of delivery, where the placenta then begins to become detached from the mother. Is when you have the possibility of some of the blood mixing. Is when that blood then goes into the maternal circulation. Now, it only becomes a problem if the mother is blood type negative. Okay, so whether she's A negative, B negative, AB negative, O negative, whatever it is if she's a negative, if she's carrying negative RH incompatibility, then that's where you can have a problem, okay, which I'll go more in depth on another video, okay. Also, it aids in endocrine and immune function. Now, with the placenta, we have two parts to the placenta. You have the mother side and you have the baby side, which is the fetus side, okay? Now, with the mother side, the maternal side, it is known as the dirty Duncan. And the reason why it's called the dirty Duncan, because if you look at it, it looks like raw liver. It's very red and fleshy looking, okay? And that side is the side that is mainly towards the mother. So that's the one that is at the uterine wall, right, that is going to be more attached to the mother. Whereas the fetus side is your shiny Schultz, okay? And with the shiny Schultz It gets its name because it looks like this shiny grayish color, okay? And that side of the placenta is towards the fetus, okay? So that part is overlooking at the fetus, okay? So that's the fetus side, and the maternal side is going to be more towards the mother, okay? And then you have your umbilical cord, okay, which your umbilical cord develops alongside the placenta, right? And it comes from the amnion, and what it does, it connects the placenta to the fetus, okay? So, again, the umbilical cord is like that baby's lifeline because the placenta is here, and then you have the umbilical cord, which is then going to connect to the fetus. So every part of what the mother is giving to the baby, the exchanges of O2 and the excretion of CO2, right? All of that is taking place through the umbilical cord. So as the mother is providing oxygen, when that baby breathes in that oxygen and now is excreting the CO2, it then passes back into the umbilical cord, into the maternal circulation, and then she's able to bring it out. So any part of the baby that has any expiratory function is going to be processed through that umbilical cord. That is literally the lifeline, okay? And that is what connects the nutrients from the mother to the baby, all right, as well as oxygen. So that is a very, very big deal. So you want to make sure that there is no cord compression, that, you know, the umbilical cord is free from the baby, so that way the baby is able to get the optimal amount of nutrition and nutrients and oxygen that it needs. So the umbilical cord is composed of 2 arteries, which I put in blue for a reason, and 1 vein. Now, as you guys know, in the typical adult anatomy, all of your arteries are mainly going to be carrying oxygenated blood, which in turn are going to be red, that bright red blood, right? And all your veins are color-coded as blue because they're carrying deoxygenated blood. But when it comes to the fetus, and their umbilical cord is the reverse. So the arteries are going to be carrying deoxygenated blood, which is why I put in blue, okay? And the vein is going to be carrying the oxygenated blood, okay? So just remember that. It's composed of 2 arteries, 1 vein. One way I remember about the 2 arteries, right? With the 2 arteries, right? I think of art, right? And if you think of an art gallery, you go to see more than one painting, a picture of an art piece. So you know that there's more arteries, so there's 2 arteries, all right, and your 1 vein, okay? So if that makes sense in any way, shape, or form, I know it sounds weird, but trust me, it has worked for me, and it has worked for other people, right? When you go to an art gallery, you go to see more than one piece of art, right? You go to see a gallery work of art, right? So we have 2 arteries and your 1 vein, okay? If not, then just try to remember it, okay? Also, these vessels are going to be supported by a white connective tissue that is called your Wharton's jelly, okay? And I will go ahead and post a picture of that in just a moment. But your Wharton's jelly, okay, it literally, think of like gel consistency, okay? It's pretty much like that feel, and what it does is support and prevents any cord compression, okay? Which again, you don't want any cord compression because those vessels that are inside is passing nutrients and giving nutrients, right, continually to the fetus until that baby is born, okay? So you don't want anything going wrong with those vessels, all right? Also, you have another term which is also known as nuchal cord, and what nuchal cord is when the umbilical cord is wrapped around the baby's neck. So nuchal meaning neck, right, and your cord is the cord. So it's wrapped around the baby's neck. So if you're seeing the delivery process and you see it has written down on the charts or on the assessment, you noted that the baby has the umbilical cord wrapped around, right, and you see nuchal cord times 2. What that simply means is that the umbilical cord was wrapped around the baby's neck 2 times, okay? And times 3, times 4, you know what that means. That is the number of times that that cord was wrapped around that baby's neck, okay? Or times 1. So again, nuchal cord, right, is when the umbilical cord is wrapped around the baby's neck. Right? And in this picture, inside the uterus, you have the membranes, you have the chorion and you have the amnion, right, which is going to make up your amniotic membranes, and which is going to produce the amniotic fluid, which you can see right here in this picture. Also, inside the uterus, you have your placenta, where you can see it's attached to the uterine wall. So this whole picture is just showing you an outer layer of the uterus. So as you can see, your placenta, it's almost attached, half of the uterine wall is attached to that placenta. Also, the umbilical cord will then roll with the placenta, and that itself is going to connect to the fetus, okay? And then down where you see the cervix area, okay, the cervix is very long and thick during pregnancy, and before the baby comes out, that cervix, that same cervix that is thick, has to thin out, okay, and it shrinks up, and what it's called is effacement, okay, and that's when the cervix is thinning and the shortening of the cervix, okay, so the thinning and shortening of the cervix is called effacement, and in order for a woman to be able to give birth, that effacement has to be up to 100%, so effacement goes from 0 to 100%, and then it goes up by 10% increments. So if she was at 20%, she will be at 30%, 40%, so on and so on until she gets to the 100. And then also you want the cervix to dilate, which the dilate is pretty much the shortening of the cervix, okay? So those go by centimeters, and a total of 10 centimeters lets you know that she is ready to push. Until she's 10, she will not push, okay? So again, dilation and effacement doesn't always have to correlate with the thinning, but it usually occurs before the dilation. So the thinning normally happens first and then the dilation, okay? So they don't have to be in sync with each other, all right? And your multigravida gets thinner faster than your primigravida. And your primigravida just pretty much means that this is her first time pregnant, her first time having a pregnancy, where multigravida is, more than once, more than twice or so. And in this picture, all right, before I just go ahead and give it away, what side do you think this part of the placenta belongs to? All right, if you said the fetus side, you are absolutely correct. This is the shiny Schultz. So as you can see here in this picture, it has a gray shiny look to it. And if you look closer, within the placenta, you see the white connective tissue. That's the Wharton's jelly, okay? That's part of the umbilical cord. So again, that jelly, white jelly, that is your Wharton's jelly, okay? And it is a connective tissue. And then this side of the placenta, right, you already know, if we only have two sides, so this has to be the mother side, okay? So like I was saying before, it looks like raw liver, okay? It's very red, fleshy-like looking, okay? So again, you can see another picture here at the umbilical cord where you can see the Wharton's jelly. And in this picture here, you see the umbilical cord. You actually can see the vessels. So again, the two that are in blue are your arteries because they're carrying the oxygenated blood, right? And in that large vessel, that one large vessel that's red, that is your vein. And the reason why it's red is because it's carrying oxygenated blood. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about fetal circulation. Now, with fetal circulation, the main thing you need to know is that the lungs and liver are not functional, okay? So they have to be bypassed because they're not functioning, so we have to find another way. That's pretty much the big thing with fetal circulation. So when you think of fetal circulation, it's just the baby's unique way of still getting what it needs without having the liver and the lungs do the job for him. Okay? So with that said, circulation bypasses these organs, right, through the special fetal circulation structures, which I'll go over in just a few minutes. Okay? Now, the placenta takes over the role of the respiration of the gas exchanges. Okay? So again, the oxygen goes from the mother, right, through the one vein, that one big vein that we saw, right, to the fetus, right, through that umbilical cord, and it gives the baby its oxygen. And then that baby breathes in that oxygen and excretes the CO2. That CO2 then goes into those two arteries, right, that are the oxygenated, right, blood that comes back to the mother circulation, and then she then excretes it out. Okay, so the placenta, right, is taking on that role of the lungs. Okay, Now, also within fetal circulation, the system maintains blood flow to the placenta because, again, if the placenta dies, everything dies with it because what's connected to the placenta, right? Not only is the baby, but the umbilical cord that is the lifeline to that baby. All right, so you always want to make sure that that nutrients is still going towards the placenta because in this time frame, right, the lungs and the liver is not able to function. So there's other things that is going to compensate for that, all right, which I'm going to get to right now. All right, and just a little fun key fact that I thought that was very interesting. Okay, the heart of the fetus begins to beat with just 4 weeks into pregnancy. All right, so within 4 weeks into pregnancy, that heart is already beating. So imagine that heart is beating from the time it's been 4 weeks to the time that baby is going to keep on breathing till they get into adolescence and adulthood until finally it passes. So within 4 weeks of our existence, our heart has never stopped beating since then, right? I don't know. I just think that is a cool thing. So I just had to just mention that there because it was just so fascinating. So now with the fetal circulation, there are 3 main structures that is very important to know because most of the time we're going to ask questions about the fetal circulation. So the first up is your ductus venosus. Now your ductus venosus bypasses blood from the liver through the ductus venosus and it goes to the inferior vena cava. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put a picture up, okay, but I did draw a little illustration down here to kind of show you. Hopefully it makes a lot of sense and it's easy for you to grasp, okay? So I'll go over that in just a moment. Now, here you have your ductus venosus, okay? So I'm going to show you that structure. So you have your placenta and you have your umbilical cord, right? And I put it in red here because the vein is the one in red, and then as you can see the blue lining, those are the 2 arteries, okay? So that is going to automatically bypass the liver because the liver is not functioning at this moment. So it bypasses the liver, gets to the inferior vena cava to then now supply blood to the right atrium, okay? So that's pretty much what ductus venosus is doing, okay? It is a bypass tunnel that is bypassing the liver to get that blood to the inferior vena cava so that blood can then now get into the heart, okay? So blood, say that again, blood bypasses the liver through the ductus venosus and goes to the inferior vena cava directly, okay? So it skips the liver from here, it comes up, skips the liver, automatically comes into the inferior vena cava, okay, and then it brings the blood into the right atrium. All right, so now we're going to go to the next structure. All right, our foraminal valve. Now with our foraminal valve, anything with foramen or forama means a hole, okay? So I'm going to let you guys know exactly where that hole is taking place. All right, so our foraminal valve, once the blood now enters through the inferior vena cava, right, the blood now enters to the right atrium and bypasses the lungs to the left atrium, okay? So remember, in a regular, normal heart here, right, you have your normal heart, it brings blood from the inferior vena cava, the blood then comes into the right atrium, it's supposed to go down the right ventricle into the pulmonary trunk, to the pulmonary arteries, to then have the lungs bring it with oxygen, right? So now that blood comes back oxygenated into the right and left pulmonary veins, okay? So you have some pulmonary veins that will come and that will go directly into the left atrium. From the left atrium, it will make its way down to the left ventricles. From the left ventricle, it will go up to the aorta, to the ascending aorta, aorta arc, to the descending aorta, and that is the normal blood flow, right? But remember, our lungs are not working, right? Because it has to bypass the liver and the lungs. So if I put that blood into the lungs, I'm trapped because it's not working. So what we're going to do, the body then says, you know what? We're going to make a hole right down the center. So with that hole, right? Once the blood is bypassed straight to the inferior vena cava, it's now into the right atrium. From the right atrium, I'm not going to do this step here, right? Because my goal is I just want to get the blood to the rest of my body. And as long as I can get it to the left atrium, I am fine. So the body creates a hole, right? So all babies, when they're in fetal, in an embryo, so they have a hole in their heart. And that hole provides access directly over into the left atrium. Now from the left atrium, the blood will make its way down to the left ventricle, will go up the ascending aorta, the aortic arch, and then finally the descending aorta to give blood supply to the rest of the body, right? Because the baby still has legs, it still has its kidneys, it still has all these different organs and functions that is needed throughout the whole time in pregnancy. So the blood is going to be shunted from the right atrium to the left atrium, okay? And then finally from there, then it goes to the other process. So it skips this process into the lungs because the lungs are not functioning, okay? So that's pretty much what the foramen ovale is talking about, okay? And again, I will go ahead and show another picture in case this picture is not the best. And then last but not least, we're going to get to the ductus arteriosus. Now with the ductus arteriosus, blood from the superior vena cava, right, passes through the right ventricles and pulmonary arteries through the ductus arteriosus into the descending aorta on its way back to the placenta. So you're probably saying, what did I just say, right? So I'm going to show you an illustration right here. So pretty much what is happening, okay, it is a byway here to here. That pretty much sums it up. So all of this is pretty much what this is. So the aorta, alright, so I'm going to do that again. The aorta, right, and a normal functioning heart, it will then pass through here, go to the lungs, right? The lungs will bring it back with oxygen, come to the left atrium, then come work its way back down to the left ventricle, come up the aorta, to the aorta, and come back around, right, to give blood to the rest of the body. But the lungs still needs its nutrients, right? And if there's no blood flow that is going this way at all, how can those organs ever develop, right? So at the end of the day, we had to find another way to supply blood supply to the lungs without it being trapped there, and another way to bring blood back to the placenta, okay? So in here, the reason why we couldn't use this step of bringing the blood, right, into the lungs, because all the blood would stay right there and it wouldn't get to the rest of the body, right? Because it would just come here and this part is not functioning. So what are you going to do on this part? Because that part still needs to be nutrient, right? It still has to have its nutrients. So what you're going to do, you're going to make a bypass. So the body naturally does this on its own. It makes a bypass. So some of that blood, where's my red marker? So some of that blood, right, that was making its way, that shunted over to this side, right, that made its way to the left atrium, that went down to the left ventricle, up the aorta, to the rest of the body, right? If I do that, I would never be able to feed those areas. So what happens is, blood then comes down here. Sorry. Blood then comes down here and goes to both sides of the lungs, okay? That's pretty much what that is doing, okay? And from there, it goes to the placenta, and the process starts all over again, okay? So again, this is the ductus arteriosus, which supplies blood to the pulmonary arteries and the lungs itself, and then it's also able to then give blood back to the placenta for the process to start all over again, okay? So we have our three different structures that goes together with fetal circulation. So again, the main thing is that we're just finding another way to give the body what it needs, even though the liver and lungs are not working, okay? So I hope that this helps, and I hope that this illustration helps as well. If not, I will definitely go ahead and post the pictures up so that way you can see a more detailed, scientific looking picture, and maybe that diagram will be better suited for you, okay? But for those of you guys who are visual learners and understand this concept, great. And just remember, it is bypassing the liver and the lungs, okay? How is it doing that? By this process right here. All right, and last but not least, cephalocardial development. Now, cephalocardial, all right, cephalo meaning head, cardio meaning tail. I don't know if you guys remember from the spinal cord, right? When you have all the horse-like tail, they call it the cauda equina, right? Because all the nerves are pretty much all spread throughout the place, and it looks like horsehair, right? And it's Latin for horsetail, right? Cauda equina. So cardial, right, meaning tail. So cephalo, head to tail development, all right? So that kind of gives you a big giveaway of knowing how this baby is going to be developing, right, from head to tail. So in fetal circulation, the body develops from head to tail, like I just stated, all right? Now, higher amounts of oxygen is going to be going to the core parts of the body. So the head, the neck, the heart, right? And then eventually it'll get to the abdominal organs and then the lower extremities. But it's going to give it to the most important first and then work its way down to the other parts of the body. So higher oxygen is going to go to the core body, right? And why is that? Because it is the most important part, right? Our head, our heart, right? Those parts of our bodies are the most important. So the body wants to make sure, hey, if I don't have enough blood supply, I at least need to have blood supply to the main organs first, right? The others can get it later, but I need the main organs to make sure that they get their nutrients first. And then the other oxygen is then going to go to the lower parts of the body, all right? And just a key note here, that is why it is normal when you see a newborn is finally out and you're doing your APGAR score and you're looking at this baby and you see they have blue hands and blue feet, right? And the mother may be alarming, like, oh my gosh, what's going on with my baby, right? As healthcare professionals, we know that that is fine, that is absolutely normal. As long as the core part of the body is pink, that is what we're more focused on, because again, the cardial development is what's causing that, okay? It's starting from the head to the tail, all right? So it wants to make sure that the core part of the body is getting the nutrients that it needs, and then finally, after that is secure, then it will make its way and give nutrients to the other parts of the body, including the hands and feet. So it's okay if there's some delay and you see that you have blue hands and blue feet on your baby, all right? It is absolutely normal, all right? And that is because of cephalocardial development. Alright, so that is it. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments that you would like to leave, go ahead and put that in the comment section below. And if you have not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and click that subscribe button. Also, if you would like to follow me, I have an Instagram, also known as the_journey21. So again, if you want to know when I have my latest videos, if you want inspirational tips, or you just want to just see what's going on a day-to-day basis, you can go ahead and follow me on my Instagram, okay? And again, thank you for coming on this journey, and see you on the next one.